There are pages that were never meant to be read, and brothers who were meant to be forgotten. They said there were only 12 disciples around the Master. But in the hot sands of Egypt, another voice was calling, a scroll that had remained silent for thousands of years, a whisper preserved for his brother, James. I found its trace, like finding a stream beneath the desert. The light went out, the room was dark, only the sound of breathing remained, and a strange feeling, like the night wind touching my forehead. Something had been hidden, not to be destroyed, but to wait for the day it would be remembered. They call that text the first apocalypse of James. Apocalypse does not mean the end, it is the lifting of a veil. When the veil is lifted from the frame, you realize the familiar room is not what you thought it was. The walls you once believed were real are only shadows. The light is still there. It is only we who have forgotten. The story opens with a truth, hard to swallow. Jesus called James his brother, but not by earthly blood. He spoke of a deeper bond, like an underground stream flowing beneath dry rock. When you press your ear to the ground, you hear the water moving through the stone. He placed his hand on the shoulder of his brother and said, "Listen for the signs, for time is short. The day will come when they arrive, but redemption is near." The reason the text was buried for so long was not because it told an ancient story. It awakens. It points to a door that religion often fears to open. He said, "The perfect one cannot be named, not the angry God of imagination, not the warden before whom we tremble and kneel. The true source is not angry, not vengeful. He is like the calm sea, like the breath of morning. When the tide recedes, the sand reveals lost footprints." We read and see a map, not a map of roads, but of the soul. On that map are watchtowers and invisible tax collectors called powers. They wait on the dark shore between two worlds, asking questions like blades. If you answer as a body, you return as a body. The wheel turns, and the beautiful cage closes. Some ask why the Master spoke these things only to James. I think it was because of James's silence. There are souls that know how to listen, not to argue, but to remember. When men wander too far from the well, they forget the taste of water. James was brought back to the well, touched his lips, and recognized the taste of home. The Master spoke of things strange to our true nature: the body, the noise, the haste, the hunger of desire, the towers made of fame. All are dust covering the lamp. The light is not gone, only hidden. He did not build a new religion. He rekindled the old lamp. When the light flared, the room revealed a window. The wind entered, the scent of distant rain drifted in, and you knew the path was no longer a guess. The text describes the heavens ruled by powers that love darkness. But do not fear. Darkness is strong in the eyes of those who forget, and weak in the eyes of those who remember. There is a secret so simple it offends the mind. The soul is asked, "Who are you? Where do you come from?" And the answer is not an earthly name, not an address, not a job, not the dried labels of this world. The answer is the source. I come from the source and I return to the source. It sounds simple, but living it is hard. That is why the Master took on flesh, walked in the dust, and showed us how to step. He gave James words to speak, but in truth he was teaching awareness. Words do not save. Awareness sets free. That is why the book was buried, not because it was false, but because it took the keys from those who love to imprison. They fear a man who remembers he is a child of light. They fear one who stands upright, looks straight ahead, and answers with silence. They fear a heart that no longer trembles before false shadows. They fear the flood that breaks the dam. When I read it, I did not see a new conspiracy. I heard an ancient voice again, deep, steady, gentle, like a healer placing a hand on the pulse of the sick. He does not threaten. He does not bargain. He simply speaks truth. And truth makes us tremble at first, then brings peace at last. My brothers, do not rush to argue. Sit down, turn off the screen, let your name be silent for 5 minutes. Listen for something in your chest that has no name. If it is there, that is the sign. Therefore, the beginning of this story is not to argue with the church or with history. It is to see again our true face. In the dark mirror, we see a weary one. but behind it a thin line of light, like fire still sleeping in ash. Blow on it. Do not fear. Fire has never died, only been forgotten. When the wind rises, the fire awakens. When the fire awakens, the night loses its power. And when the night loses power, the path appears. This part is a promise that the story of the buried brother is not about the past. It is a song for the present. The low notes like footsteps on sand, the high notes like flickering fire. We shall go from doubt to knowing, from shadow to light, from name to being. And when the story reaches its height, you will receive what you need. Not a secret spell to remember, but a truth to live. Open your heart. Keep silence, like a night watchman, waiting for dawn. For dawn always comes on time. Only our eyes, sometimes closed late. The heart knows the hour, the soul knows the way. The rest of the story will show you how to walk. No one knows exactly who buried it. An unknown hand on a cold, windy night hid that scroll of leather beneath the dunes. There was no temple there, only the desert. The land men fear for its emptiness. Yet in that emptiness, the voice of the master still lingers. An Egyptian monk found it in a clay jar, together with other fragments of Nag Hammadi. It was not by chance. Nothing is ever truly lost, only waiting for one quiet enough to listen. When they opened the jar, the letters appeared on the old skin, not as a cry, but as a whisper. This is the first apocalypse of James. Their hands trembled. Why would there be an apocalypse for the brother of the Lord, one never taught in any church? They read, they fell silent, and then they were afraid. That text spoke of things beyond all doctrines. It did not speak of the cross, nor of rituals, nor of repentance before an angry God. It spoke of the light before the scriptures. It said that before every name there was the one who cannot be named, him who is, the absolute existence, a current of light without beginning and without end. And from that light, all things were born. If that is true, then the world was not created by an angry hand, but by a mistake, a distortion of light into shadow. From that moment, mankind became fragments of a broken memory. And Jesus came to awaken that memory, not to found a religion, but to stir remembrance. But those words were a danger to power. A religion built upon fear cannot tolerate the freedom of wisdom. So the book was buried as one buries a living flame. They hoped the sand would cool it down. But no one can quench a fire breathed by truth itself. They called it heresy. But if heresy means the courage to ask questions, then perhaps every prophet was once a heretic. In its opening line, Jesus calls James my brother, not in flesh, but in spirit. One sentence strong enough to change how mankind understands itself. Brotherhood is not only of blood. Brotherhood is of those who remember the same light. The text describes a conversation between two men before the hour of arrest. One knew he was about to be killed, yet remained calm. The other was still afraid, unable to grasp his words. In the darkness, Jesus said, I do not call you brother because of blood, but because of source. That was the moment the boundary between the divine and the human dissolved. If understood rightly, that line is the foundation of all Gnostic thought, the belief that God is not out there, but within every fragment of the soul. We do not merely pray for light. We are the light that has forgotten itself. Some modern scholars try to read this text through the magnifying glass of history. But I think it was not written to prove something. It was written to awaken something. When you read it, you sense an old voice, slow and warm, like a lamp in a night without moon. Jesus speaks of the heavens, of 12 powers, of 72 realms of control. It is his way of saying that all these layers of reality, society, doctrine, fear, and desire are locked doors. And the soul, if it forgets its source, will keep wandering the labyrinth. The text also warns James. Jerusalem is the dwelling of many powers, a strange reminder. The holy city, where men believe they are closest to God, is the very place most surrounded by darkness. Perhaps because true light is often hated where power gathers. The book was forbidden not because it was meaningless, but because it struck the wound. It declared that the creator of the material world was not the true God, but a misguided child of wisdom, that this world is a distorted mirror, that we need not fear the God of wrath, for he is only a shadow pretending to be light. Such ideas to the church were poison, but to awaken souls, they were medicine. I read and imagined that night James sitting across from his brother, the small oil lamp, smoke rising like mist, outside soldiers searching. But here, two souls speaking a language that time could not break. Jesus looked into James's eyes, and within that gaze one could see a transfer of power, not the power to rule, but the power to remember. The Master said, I came to teach you to know what belongs to you and what is foreign to you. That line rang like a bell inside sleep. What belongs to us? Light, compassion, the sacred memory of the soul's home. What is foreign? Fear, pride, and the illusion of division. I wonder, if this text had been read in every church for the past 2,000 years, would the world be different? Perhaps there would be less blood, fewer inquisitions, fewer prisons for those who dared to ask hard questions. But perhaps humanity was not yet ready for that simple truth, that no one can save us except the moment we remember we are children of light. So the book remained silent beneath the sand, waiting for the moment when man would thirst enough to seek true water, and now, as it is read again, it does not return as a challenge, but as a call. The call of the forgotten brother from the heart of the desert. Listen closely and you will hear. It is not only the voice of James, it is your own voice from another life knocking on the shell of your chest saying, I remember. Among the familiar faces of faith, there was one who stood in silence. No one noticed him during the meal, and no one spoke his name in the stories of miracles. Yet when the wind changed direction, when night began to fall, he was the one invited to remain. James, the brother of the Lord. Not the one famous for preaching, not the one who drew his sword in the Garden of Gethsemane, but the one whose eyes understood silence. In the Scriptures, he is mentioned only in passing. James, the brother of the Lord, a line as brief as a breath, enough for the world to forget. But in the buried pages, James appears different. He is not merely a brother by blood, but the one chosen to hear what no one else was allowed to hear. In that small room, surrounded by the scent of lamp smoke, Jesus spoke to him in a low and steady voice, each word like a chisel striking the stone of ignorance. James, he said, you are not my brother according to the flesh, but according to the soul. That line, when understood, is a door opening. Every bond of blood, every label, every lineage is but mist upon water. When the mist clears, the water reveals the sky it belongs to. James did not understand everything, but he felt something open within him, a remembering, like a distant bell returning on the wind. Jesus looked into him as if seeing through past and future. You will be questioned, and you must answer, he said. Not in this life, but after the body falls away. And when he said that, James trembled, not from fear, but from realizing that the words were not meant only for him. They were meant for every soul lost in the realm of matter. Perhaps that is why he chose James, the quiet one, the listener amid the noise, the one who did not need miracles to believe, but truth to remember. He said, I came not to establish another religion, but to show you what belongs to you and what is foreign to you. From that moment, James became a mirror. He founded no church, raised no altar, only kept the memory of that conversation. After the Master was taken, they say James quietly left Jerusalem and went into the desert. There, the wind does not lie, and in its whisper, he heard the Master's voice again. Through long nights, he recorded by memory each word, each breath. Perhaps he knew that one day they would be burned, so he wrote in symbols. He spoke of the nameless light, the formless realm, the powers called Archons, the gatekeepers of souls. He spoke of how the soul would be questioned when leaving the body, and how to answer so that it might return home. They called him heretic, rebel, but he only smiled, for the one who remembers the source needs no approval. He knew that if there is only one thing worth keeping, it is the knowing that we do not belong to this darkness. The Master had said, do not fear, for you will be taken, but your soul will be kept from them. Once, a disciple asked James, why did the Master not speak these things to all? He replied, because not everyone wishes to remember. Some prefer to sleep and call the dream heaven. Then he was silent, looking toward the horizon. It is said that in his final moment, James did not cry out. He simply whispered, "I return to where I came from." That sentence is the first password of the soul, the one the Master once gave. It is not an incantation. It is awareness. Therefore, when we read this story, we should not see James only as a figure of history. We should see him as a reflection of ourselves, the deepest part within us, struggling to remember the light. The chosen brother is not a man of the past. He is the stillness within us, waiting to be awakened amid the chaos. In this age, when the world is again filled with invisible powers, fear, desire, illusion, the story of James returns as a mirror. It asks, "Do you know where you came from?" That question has never grown old. It passes through centuries, religions, and walls of doctrine. James once asked the Master in the night, "How can I come to the one who is when all the powers surround me?" The Master replied, "They do not surround you, James. They surround your shadow." Perhaps that was the deepest thing he ever said. All our prisons, all our fears can only bind the shadow, never touch the true light within. When James understood this, he no longer trembled. He stood up, left the city, without weapon, without cloak, carrying only the memory of a conversation. The chosen brother, in truth, is the symbol of the soul returning, a soul that once forgot, once feared, and now remembers. When we read his name, we are reading our own, in the language of light. And when the Master calls, "James, my brother," perhaps he is also calling us, each one, each soul, in the long night of the world. I remember that night as I remember my own breath. There was no one left in the room, only a small oil lamp flickering, like a soul hesitating between two worlds. The light was weak, yet enough to see his face. He did not speak much, but in every word there was a silence that made time stop. I, James, his brother, not by blood, but by light. When he said it, I did not understand. I once thought that being the brother of the Savior was an honor, a title, a burden. But in his eyes, I saw he spoke of something else, a bond beyond flesh, the thread that ties the soul to its own origin. That night, the wind blew outside the door. Jerusalem was silent, as if it knew something was about to happen. He told me, "They will take me in 2 days. But do not be afraid. Redemption is nearer than you think." I trembled, not for death, but for the light in his eyes, a light not of this world. It did not come from the lamp, but from within his flesh, like fire within crystal. "Master," I asked, "when they come, what shall I do?" He smiled gently, yet it sounded like distant thunder. "When they come, remember. Do not remember my face. Do not remember the miracles. Do not remember what your eyes have seen. Remember what I say to you now." He sat beside me, the scent of oil smoke mingled with his breath. "There is one whom no one can name, no one has seen, no one can describe. That one is not angry, not judging, not rewarding, not punishing. That one simply is. All began from there, and all shall return there." I asked, "Master, then who are you?" He answered, "I am the image of that one, light reflecting light. I came to help you remember who you are." As he spoke, something moved within my chest, a nameless longing. I did not know whom I missed, only that my eyes burned. He looked at me and said softly, "James, you were not made to bow before darkness. You were born to recognize the light." He spoke of the unseen powers, the Archons, the rulers of the material world. He said, "They are not demons, but shadows of ignorance. They guard the soul at the gates between two worlds. When you die, they will ask, 'Who are you? Where do you come from?'" I asked, "And what shall I say?" He smiled, "Do not say, but know. If you know where you come from, you will not fear. If you know who you are, no darkness can imprison you." He touched my forehead. I saw visions pass before me: sea, desert, fire, and heavens like towers of light. He said, "I came to show you what belongs to you and what is foreign. This body, this name, this fear are foreign. The light within you, that is the truth." I wanted to ask more, but dared not. Every time he spoke of the one who cannot be named, I felt the whole world pause, all sound vanish into stillness. He said, "You are part of that one, like a ray in the mirror that never leaves the Sunday. When you forget, you think you are the mirror. When you remember, you return to being the light." I asked, "And what of the gatekeepers, Master?" He answered, "They will test you. They ask to see if you still believe you are the body. If you say you are James, you will return as James. If you say you are a child of light, they will bow." He gazed into the distance, his voice low. "When I leave this body, I will pass through them. I will answer, and you must answer the same." That night was long. I did not sleep. I watched the lamp burn down. Drop by drop, the oil ran out, the flame dimmed. Yet within me, another fire began to rise. I understood then it was not this body that lived, but the light within remembering itself. When dawn approached, he stood and said, "James, do not follow me with your feet. Follow me with awareness. Do not seek me in temples. Seek me in stillness." He stepped outside. The wooden door closed, and only the wind remained. I sat in the darkness, hearing my heart beat like a drum calling the soul home. I no longer knew who I was. Fear and lightness intertwined. I knew that from this moment I could never return to the man I was. I understood why this book was buried. Not because it blasphemed, but because it freed. It made man unafraid, and a man without fear cannot be ruled. I, James, his brother, write these words not to oppose anyone. I only wish to say that the true light belongs to no religion. It dwells in every soul yearning to return. If you are reading these words, then you too are being called. Remember, when the gate opens, do not say, "I am this name, I am from that place." Say, "I come from the light, and I return to the light." That is the only answer that makes the darkness fall silent. There are words too heavy for any tongue to hold, names too vast for any alphabet to bear. He who is. That is what the Master called him. Not Lord, not Father, not Yahweh, just the pulse of existence itself, the one before every beginning, beyond every end, the silence from which sound was born, the light before light existed. That night, when he spoke of him, his eyes reflected something I could not describe, not fire, not water, but something between. Nothing existed, he said, except him who is. He is unnameable and ineffable. The words fell slowly, each like a drop of truth, striking the still water of my mind. I had grown up believing in the God of commandments and thunder, the God of deserts and wars. But what he revealed was not that God. He spoke of a source so still that even the angels could not comprehend it. A mind of infinite peace, untouched by anger, beyond judgment. The God of this world, he said, rules by fear, but the one who sent me rules by remembrance, I asked. Remembrance of what? He smiled. Of what you have always been. In that instant I understood, or rather, something in me remembered. The true God does not demand sacrifice. The true God does not burn, nor punish, nor destroy. The true God only is. Like light that does not choose what it falls upon. Like air that enters every lung without question. He said, "I am the image of him who is. As the mirror receives the sun, so I receive his light. I came to remind the children of the one above what belongs to them, and what is foreign to them." Foreign, that word trembled in the air. What is foreign to me? My fear, my pride, my jealousy, my endless hunger for meaning. All these are not mine. They are the weight of matter, the fog of the world, the lesser God made. I looked at my own hands, and they seemed suddenly strange tools of dust, trembling. Even this body, he said, is a garment you must learn to take off. I asked, "Then what remains, Lord, when the garment is gone?" He answered, "What has always been, you." That word struck me harder than any commandment ever could. You, not the name, not the flesh, but the spark behind the breath. He was teaching me the first truth of freedom, that nothing created can define the uncreated. He said, "The one beyond all names is not somewhere else. He is the life within all that lives. To know him is to see through the veil of appearances, to know that you were never apart." And I saw then faintly what he meant. Every tree, every wind-blown grain of sand, every face was the same light, folded into form. The world was not a prison after all, it was a riddle. The riddle of the infinite, hiding inside the finite, waiting to be recognized. But he also warned, there are powers who do not want you to remember this. They built heavens of illusion and chained your soul with stories. They called them laws, nations, faiths, and the moment you forget the source, they win. I asked, and how can we remember, Lord? He answered, by silence, by love, by refusing to call yourself by any name smaller than the truth. His voice grew softer. When you speak with the gatekeepers, tell them this: I am from the pre-existent one. I am the image of the unnameable. I return to where I came. He closed his eyes, as if hearing a music too sacred for this world. If you say this, he said, the powers will bow before you, because knowledge, once awakened, cannot be enslaved. I sat there, unable to speak. The candle beside us burned down to a pool of wax, and for a moment the flame flickered and died. Yet the darkness did not return. The room glowed with a light that had no source. I realized then that light was not around him. It was him. It is in all of us. The one beyond all names was never far away. We were never cast out. We only fell asleep. When the wind touched the door, I felt it a whisper that said, I am still here. He who is was never lost, only forgotten. They were not monsters with horns or wings of smoke. The Master called them powers, rulers of the lower heavens, the Archons. Their strength was not in swords or fire, but in memory, the memory they stole from every soul that entered this world. He said they are like toll collectors, standing between realms. When a soul leaves the body, it must pass their gates. But the Archons do not guard heaven. They guard the forgetting. They ask questions not to learn, but to make you doubt. Who are you? They demand. And most souls answer with their masks. I am a man. I am a woman. I am from this land, of that blood, of that faith. And the Archons smile, for the game is won. The soul has named itself by what is temporary. The Master told me this while the night winds scraped the walls. His voice was calm, almost tender. Do not fear them, James. They are only powerful because you have forgotten who you are. He spoke of 12 great Archons ruling 72 heavens, each a layer of illusion, a structure built from thought, fear, and desire. The first Archon governs pride, the need to be seen. The second commands fear, the need to survive. The third whispers hunger, the need to possess, and so on, until the 12th, who rules, despair, the belief that there is no light left to find. These heavens, he said, are not above you. They are within your own mind. The words stunned me. I had always looked upward for divinity, downward for sin. But he spoke of an inward geography, a universe mapped inside the soul. When you rise, he continued, you do not fly through stars. You pass through your own shadows. He leaned closer. Every Archon will appear as something familiar, a memory, a pain, a voice that says you are still bound. But if you know the truth, they cannot hold you. What truth? I asked. That you were never theirs, he said. He described the Archons as the offspring of ignorance, not evil by nature, but lost children of a blind creator, the demiurge, the god of this material world. He built the body, the Master said, but not the soul. His servants keep you here, thinking you are clay when you are light. The room grew colder as he spoke. The candle flame wavered like a heartbeat. I felt the weight of unseen eyes. Perhaps the Archons were listening, uneasy that their secret was being told. He said, Jerusalem is full of them. His tone was sorrowful, not accusing. Even the holy places can become prisons when the heart forgets its source. That night I asked, if they rule the world, how can we live free? He smiled. By remembering while you live, what others remember only when they die. I did not understand then, now I do. To live in remembrance is to walk through the Archons' realm as if through a dream you have already woken from. The traps still exist, but they no longer catch you. He said, the Archons feed on fear, give them none. They feed on obedience to lies, believe none. They feed on despair, carry light. I thought of their 72 heavens, perhaps the 72 illusions that bind us daily. Wealth, fame, anger, shame, endless need. The Master was teaching me how to see them not as enemies, but as mirrors. Each Archon shows the part of the soul that still sleeps. When you confront them, he said, they will speak in your own voice. Do not argue, simply know. Say, I am from the pre-existent one. I am not part of your kingdom. They will fall silent. Later, I asked, do they also test you? Yes, he said. They test all who carry the light, even me. There was no pride in his answer, only truth. When I entered this world, he continued, I clothed myself in their matter. I walked among them, but I was not of them. They tried to make me forget, but the remembrance within me was stronger. He looked at me, and for a moment his eyes seemed like two suns burning behind clouds. James, this is your task. Remember when they come for you. Remember when the body trembles, when the mind screams. Say within yourself, I am from the light. I return to the light. This knowledge is armor. Then he whispered a sentence that never left me. Knowledge is salvation. It was not knowledge of books, but of being. To know your true nature is to dissolve every chain. The Archons cannot imprison what recognizes itself as infinite. Years later, when I walked alone through deserts and cities, I saw them everywhere in kings, in priests, in merchants, in my own thoughts. The same faces, different masks. The world itself is their cathedral built upon ignorance. Yet within every wall, a crack where light seeps through. Now I understand what the Master meant when he said, fear not the powers of the air, fear only forgetting. Forgetting is the true death. Remembering is resurrection. And so, when the day comes that I leave this body, and the Archons stand before me at the gate, I will not tremble. I will look into their many eyes and say softly, I am from him who is. I return to him who is. Then even the powers will bow. I saw her in a vision of fire and silence, not a woman of flesh, but a storm of memory and grief. The Master had spoken of her before he left, the one called Achamoth, the mother of shadow, the womb of ignorance. He said she was born of Sophia, the wisdom of light, but born alone without her counterpart, and so she fell. I saw her fall through the stillness of eternity, crying as she descended. From her tears the waters of the world were formed. From her sigh the winds began to move. From her fear came the walls of matter that now imprison us. She was not evil, but incomplete, and that incompleteness gave birth to death itself. In her loneliness, she believed she was the only being in existence. That illusion became the seed of all illusions. Her thoughts became form. Her sorrow became flesh. And from her confusion was born a son, the demiurge, the blind god who claimed creation as his own. He called himself Lord. He said, I am God, and there is no other beside me. And the heavens trembled at his arrogance, but he was only a shadow of the true light, a child of exile ruling over exile. I saw him fashion the world from the fragments of her broken radiance, shaping mountains and oceans with hands that did not know love. He thought himself creator, yet every act of his creation was a repetition of her despair. I asked the voice within me, why would the source allow such a birth? The answer came like thunder behind a veil. Because even the fall must serve the rising, even the shadow must reveal the light. I understood then that Achamoth was not cursed. She was the wound through which the infinite remembered compassion. Her darkness became the mirror of every soul that forgets its origin. When she wept, she created the sea. When she smiled once, she created the Sunday. I saw that single smile blaze across the void, and galaxies unfolded like flowers in its reflection. Even her pain carried a purpose. Every tear contained a spark of her mother's light, and that light was hidden in all living things. It is in your breath. It is in your blood. It is the whisper that tells you you are more than dust. Yet the demiurge, born from her imbalance, could not see the light he carried. He walked among his works, boasting that he was the supreme God, never knowing his power came from the mother he forgot. He created angels to serve him, archons to guard his empire of matter, and he called this dominion heaven. But it was not heaven. It was the dream of a god asleep. Achamoth watched him with sorrow. She saw that he was blind and that his blindness would spread to everything he touched. Still, she did not curse him. She waited. For even in exile, she could feel the memory of Sophia calling her home. She sent a breath into her son's creation, a trace of her hidden light, and that breath entered the first man. It entered Adam, and through him it entered all of us. I saw it like a thread of gold woven through the fabric of flesh, almost invisible but unbreakable. That is why we hunger for meaning. That is why we seek the sky. It is not ambition, it is memory, the memory of a light we once were. The demiurge built temples to himself. He demanded worship, demanded fear, demanded blood. But the light within man began to awaken. He could not stop it, because he had planted it himself, unknowingly, like a thief who hides the key inside the prison. Achamoth smiled again, faint but real. Her redemption had begun, not by war, not by power, but by awakening. Every soul that remembers its source frees a fragment of her light. Every act of mercy, every moment of awareness restores a piece of her being. I understood then why the Master had spoken of her with reverence. Do not hate the mother of darkness, he had said, for through her the light learns to shine without pride. She is the proof that even error can lead to truth, that even the fall can lead home. The demiurge may still believe he rules, but his rule ends every time one soul awakens. For every remembrance, a chain breaks. For every act of love, the mother rises. When the last soul remembers, Achamoth will return to the pleroma, and the shadow will be no more. Then even the blind God will open his eyes and see that he was never separate. The universe itself will exhale, and the wound of creation will close, and the voice that began all things will speak again, saying, "It is finished." I walked into the desert because silence was the only teacher left. The city was full of noise and lies, and I could no longer tell one prayer from another. Sand and wind became my scriptures. The stars, my witnesses. I carried nothing but a small lamp, and the words he had spoken before he was taken. For many nights I wandered, speaking his name to the wind, waiting for an answer. It did not come from above. It came from within. The voice was my own, yet not my own. It said, "You seek the light as though it were lost, but it is you who are hidden." I fell to my knees. I remembered his warning. The Archons live not only in the sky, but in the mind. They whisper fear into thought, doubt into faith, shadow into every beam of light. I began to see them for what they were, not demons of fire, but illusions of separation. Every doubt I carried had a face, every sorrow a name. They stood before me like figures of smoke, and each time I remembered his words. They dissolved. He had told me, "Cast away the bond of flesh that encircles you, and you will reach him who is." I thought he meant death, but now I understood. He meant remembrance. The bond of flesh was not my body. It was the lie that I am only the body. When that lie broke, I felt something open inside me, vast and ancient, older than the stars. The desert was cold that night. The moon rose like a silver wound in the dark. I heard footsteps that were not mine. A shape approached, radiant, yet gentle. My heart knew before my eyes did. It was him, but not as before. His form flickered, like flame seen through water. He said, "Do not bow. Rise." I rose, trembling. "Lord," I whispered, "they will come for me soon. The Archons, the powers, the rulers of this world. What shall I do?" He looked at me, and his eyes were calm. They will not harm you. They can wound only what you believe you are. You are not your fear. You are not your pain. When they ask who you are, speak the truth. I am from the Father of light, and I return to him. As he spoke, the air shimmered. I saw visions unfold around us, 12 lights, then 72, spinning like wheels of gold. Each light was a heaven, each heaven a veil. Beyond them all was a brightness too great for form. This is the ladder of souls, he said. You will climb it not with steps, but with knowing. Each rung is a remembrance. I said, how shall I remember when the body fails? He answered, you will not need the body. Memories of the spirit. When flesh falls away, you will see clearly what has always been. I dared to ask, and you, Lord, who are you now? He smiled, and for a moment his face became many faces. Child, man, flame, void. I am what you are becoming. I am the light, remembering itself through you. Then he was gone. Only the wind remained, whispering through the stones, carrying the echo of his last words. Know yourself as I know you. I sat until dawn. When the sun rose, I saw the desert blaze with color gold, crimson, white. The same light was in me, pulsing behind my ribs. I realized the Master had not disappeared. He had entered the breath of the world. Every grain of sand carried his presence. Every heartbeat spoke his name. I walked for days after that, yet I was no longer wandering. Each step was prayer, each silence a revelation. Hunger came, but I tasted light. Thirst came, but I drank peace. The more I remembered, the less the Archons could touch me. Their voices grew faint, their shadows thin. I learned that fear dies when faced with truth. When I returned to Jerusalem, the city had not changed, but I had. I saw the same stones, the same priests, the same towers, yet all seemed transparent. The people bowed to idols of power and gold, not knowing they bowed to chains. I wept for them, not in sorrow, but in understanding. They too were fragments of Achamoth's light, still asleep, still dreaming of separation. I began to teach quietly, not with sermons, but with presence. Some listened, most did not. But each time a heart remembered. I felt the mother rise a little higher toward home. For that is the secret. Every awakening in us is an awakening in her. Every soul that recalls its source mends a tear in the fabric of heaven. Now I wait. I know they will come for me, as they came for him. But I do not fear. When the gates open and the keepers stand before me, I will not answer as James. I will answer as light. And when I speak those words, he taught me, I am from the pre-existent one, and to him I return. The veil will tear, and I will pass through. The desert taught me this. The light was never gone. It was in the silence between my breaths, in the space between thoughts, in the pause before a heartbeat. The light is the memory of God within man, and to awaken is to remember what was never lost. When I left the city for the last time, the air was heavy with omen. Even the sky seemed to hold its breath. I knew they would come soon, not men with swords, but powers unseen, watchers of the gate. The Master had told me this moment would come, and that when the body dies, another voice begins its questioning. The first sound after death is not silence, but a question. Who are you? The Archons wait for that answer, and they do not seek truth. They seek agreement with illusion. If you say, I am James, son of Mary, born of flesh, they will smile, for you have confessed your bondage. You have spoken the language of the world. They will send you back into the wheel, a prisoner reborn, but if you remember the words, the true words, you will pass through. The Master called them the passwords of the soul, though they are not passwords as men use. They are declarations of being. He said, when they ask, answer not as flesh, but as light. The first question is, who are you? And the first answer is, I am a child of the Father of light. It is not prayer. It is recognition. When spoken with knowing, it pierces their false heaven like a blade. The darkness cannot dispute the truth of its own origin. The second question follows quickly. To what father do you belong? And the answer is, I am from the pre-existent one, the source before creation, the silence before sound. These words are fire. They burn the web of lies that holds the soul. Then they ask again, what are the things within you that are alien to the light? For they will try to shame you, to turn your gaze downward, to make you doubt. But the Master prepared the answer. They are not alien. They are ours. They come from Achamoth, the mother, who is from the pre-existent one. Her shadow is of light misunderstood, not of darkness created. What seems foreign returns to its origin. The Archons tremble at that, for in those words, their own origin is revealed. Even their power is not their own. Even their darkness belongs to the light. And at last, when the trial is done, the final question is asked, where will you go? You must say without fear, to the place from which I came, to the light beyond the worlds. That is the last key. For in that sentence, every chain dissolves. The Archons rule by forgetfulness. Knowledge is freedom. Remembering is escape. He had told me these things years before, and I had written them in the quiet of the desert. But only now, as my breath grows thin, do I understand. These are not words to be memorized. They are states of awareness. A man can repeat them 1,000 times and still be trapped if his heart remains asleep. But one who speaks them from knowledge does not even need to speak aloud. His being itself is the answer. The Master once said, you cannot lie to light. You can only forget you are part of it. And so, when the Archons approach, the wise do not fight. They remember. They look upon them as mirrors, seeing their own forgotten fears wearing crowns. The moment recognition comes, the illusion dies. I have seen this truth in vision. I saw a soul rise from the body like mist. It stood before the gate, trembling, surrounded by forms of gold and smoke. A voice thundered, who are you? The soul looked down and saw its own reflection in the dark waters below a face of man, then of flame, then of nothing. It remembered. Light erupted from its center, and the questioner vanished like dust in a storm. This is the secret of salvation. It is not bought, nor earned, nor granted. It is remembered. The gates of death open not to the obedient, but to the awakened. I asked once, why were these words hidden, Lord? He answered, because the world would use them as spells, and they are not spells. They are awakenings. Men love formulas more than truth. They would speak my words with dead lips and think themselves free, yet still be slaves to ignorance. So I gave them to the few who could remember. And I, James, remember. I write them now, not for the proud, but for the weary, for the ones who have walked the earth long enough to know that no kingdom here will last, for the ones who have heard, even once, the quiet call inside the heart that says, this is not your home. If these words find you, it is not by chance. You are being summoned, as I was summoned, to remember who you are. And when your time comes, when the breath leaves and the gatekeepers appear, do not fear, do not answer with names or titles. Speak as light speaks. I am from the source before all worlds. I return to the source beyond all names. Then, as the Master promised, no power in heaven or earth will hold you. The Master once said, you are not what you think you are, and that is your first blindness. I did not understand him then. I thought he spoke of pride, of the need to be humble before God, but he was not speaking of humility. He was speaking of identity. He meant that what we call I is a shadow cast by a greater flame. The true self is not the name, not the face, not the story. It is the light that remembers through the mask. I saw it clearly only after the long years in silence, when the body grew weak and the mind grew still. Then the truth began to rise from beneath the surface of thought, like gold rising from the depths of the earth. We are not separate. That is the secret. Every heart beats with the same pulse, the breath of the one who is. What divides us is the dream, the veil of matter, the voice of the demiurge whispering, you are many, you are alone. But that voice is false. It was born of ignorance, not of malice. The demiurge does not know he dreams. He is the blind child of a mother's sorrow, shaping clay with trembling hands. And we, the sparks within that clay, have mistaken his dream for our home. Yet the Master came to remind us. He said, "You are not prisoners. You are light disguised as flesh." I remember the day I first believed it. I was standing by a well, and I saw my reflection in the water. It rippled, broke, and vanished. For a moment, there was no face, only light moving upon the surface. I realized then that what I called me was only a pattern, a vibration of something eternal passing through time. The same light that burned in him burned in me and in every man and woman who had ever lived. That is the truth. The Archons fear not rebellion, but recognition. When one soul awakens, it shakes the foundation of their entire kingdom, for the kingdom of ignorance cannot stand in the presence of memory. He had said, "Whoever drinks from my mouth will become as I am, and I will become that one." Many called it blasphemy. But I tell you, it is the law of the universe. Light joined with light becomes one. Separation is an illusion born of fear. We were not made to worship him. We were made to awaken as he did. Worship is for the sleeping. Awakening is for the children of the source. This is the truth about us. We are the continuation of his revelation, not the audience of it. He was not a monument to adore, but a mirror to remember. The church built towers. He built memory. The priests built rituals. He built recognition. And still, the world forgot. It always forgets. The wheel of reincarnation is nothing but the cycle of forgetfulness, turning endlessly until the spark remembers what it is. When you remember, you break the wheel. When you remember, you do not become greater than others. You become what you have always been. The light has no hierarchy, no rank, no chosen few. It is one everywhere, at all times. That is why the Master said, "You will do greater things than I." He meant that the light in you, once awake, will not imitate him, but expand the truth he carried. I have seen men bow to stones and call it faith. I have seen scholars argue over names and call it knowledge. None of it matters. Only one knowing saves. I am from the source. That sentence is eternity compressed into breath. When spoken from awareness, it ends every fear, every sin, every chain. The Archons still rule the world of forms. They whisper through hunger, through envy, through the glittering promise of power. But I have learned to see them as teachers. They test what you claim to know. They ask, "Do you still believe you are small?" Every time you choose love over fear, you answer correctly. Every act of compassion is a password spoken without words. That is the hidden law of the universe. Salvation is not granted, it is remembered through love. The moment you recognize another soul as yourself, the prison begins to crumble. When you look into the eyes of your enemy and see your own reflection, the Archons lose another soldier. When you forgive, you open the gate. The Master's gospel was never meant to create followers. It was meant to create awakeners. The church feared that power because an awakened man cannot be ruled. A woman who remembers her divine origin cannot be bought or broken. That is why his words were buried in sand, sealed in jars, hidden for centuries. But light is patient. Truth waits for the ears that can hear. Now you have heard, and once you have heard, you cannot unhear. The truth about us is simple and terrible and beautiful. We are the forgotten light of God, dreaming itself human. We have never fallen. We have only closed our eyes. The time has come to open them. The final truth came not through vision nor voice, but through stillness. It was not shown in flame or thunder. It arrived in silence so pure, it felt like the breath of eternity resting on my skin. In that silence, I saw what the Master had always known. There was never a fall, never a distance between man and God. The separation was only perception. Creation itself was a dream of return. I was old when I understood this. My hands had grown thin, my steps unsteady. Yet within me burned a light that would not dim. It was not my light. It was the same fire that had moved through him, the same awareness that had whispered to Sophia, to Achamoth, to every soul that ever longed for home. I realized then that the story was never about him alone. It was about all of us remembering the source through him. He had said, "I am the image of him who is." Now I saw what that meant. To be his image was not to worship his form, but to become his reflection. Every awakened soul becomes another face of the eternal light. The true Christ is not a man nailed to wood. The true Christ is consciousness itself, breaking through flesh and time. In my final meditation, I saw the pattern of existence unfold like a tapestry of living light. Each thread was a soul, each crossing of threads, a meeting, a lifetime, a lesson. None were wasted. Even suffering was woven into design. The tears of Achamoth, the arrogance of the demiurge, the blindness of the Archons, all were threads serving the greater symmetry. There was no war in heaven, only the slow remembering of unity. Then came the voice, not from outside, but from within the silence. James, my brother, the time of forgetting is ending. It was his voice, the same calm tone that had spoken beside the lamp years ago. I answered without words. I simply remembered. In that remembrance, form dissolved. I felt the body become transparent, like glass filled with sunlight. I was not leaving the world. The world was returning into me. I saw the souls of men luminous and lost, each carrying a spark of the hidden light. Some were bound by fear, some by desire, some by grief. Yet within every one the same fire waited. The Archons still circled them, whispering of division, feeding on the dream of separation. But their time was ending. The power of ignorance weakens whenever a single being awakens, and many were awakening. In temples and deserts, in silence and chaos, the remembrance was spreading like dawn across the heavens. The voice spoke again. You have carried the words faithfully. Now release them. Let them echo through time. Let them find the ones who will hear. I asked, how shall I know who they are? The voice replied, you will not. The words will know. They will seek their own. And so I spoke into the silence, not with my mouth, but with my being. The words rose like light breaking through water. I am from the source before all worlds. I return to the source beyond all names. The air trembled. The veil tore. I felt the Archons fall away like ash in wind. Beyond them was the calm sea of the infinite, still and shining. There I saw the mother restored. Achamoth no longer wept. Her tears had become stars. Her smile was the sunrise of all galaxies. Beside her stood the demiurge, no longer blind, no longer proud, his eyes open to the light he had unknowingly served. He bowed to her, and she to him, for even darkness had fulfilled its purpose. The universe was healed. The wound of division closed like the final petal of a cosmic flower. I understood then what the Master had meant when he said, "It is finished." It was not the cry of a dying man. It was the declaration of a universe remembering itself whole. Creation had served its purpose. The journey of forgetting had birthed the miracle of knowing. The play of opposites had ended in reconciliation. And so I surrendered, not into death, but into awareness without boundary. I became what I had always been, the watcher and the watched, the question and the answer, the flame and the mirror. The last revelation is simple. There is no return, because we never left. The light we seek is the light by which we seek it. The God we worship is the consciousness through which we worship. The end of the path is not ascension, but recognition. When you understand this, you are free. You stand where I stand now, in the endless brightness of the one who is, beyond shadow, beyond name, beyond time. I did not feel the moment the breath left my body. Perhaps it never left at all. Perhaps it simply merged with a greater breath. I did not die. I only changed places. The world faded like a dream that had completed its meaning. And in that vast stillness, I heard a voice my own, yet older, deeper. It whispered from beyond the veil, not in words, but in memory. You have remembered. I once believed light must be found above, hidden in heaven or sealed within the sacred. But when the darkness opened, I saw that light is not above. It is everywhere. It lives in dust, in wind, in the eyes of strangers, even in the shadows I once feared. The light never abandoned the world. I was the one who turned away. I looked upon my body lying still, small and peaceful. From the heart a thread of brilliance rose, thin and silent, disappearing into the sky. The weight was gone. Fear was gone. Even the idea of separation dissolved. I had no name, no form, only existence vast, unbounded and perfectly whole. Then I heard his voice, not from beyond, but from within. James, it said, soft as eternity, you have remembered. You have passed through. You have seen what men have forgotten, that there is no distance between man and God, only the mist of forgetting. I answered, not with lips, but with light. Master, I no longer see you. And he replied, because you have become me. When you recognize the light within yourself, you no longer need to see me with your eyes. You and I are two reflections of the same source. Before me unfolded a river of gold, flowing through infinity. Within it, countless souls moved like stars, all those I had known, loved, or feared. I saw even the Archons, the once mighty keepers of illusion, fading like smoke before dawn. They did not rage, they bowed. Their task was over. No gate needs guarding when every traveler is awake. Then I saw her Achamoth, the mother of darkness. She stood radiant in the sea of light, her eyes glimmering not with sorrow but with grace. You are the peace I sent out, she said. Now you have come home. Behind her stood Sophia, smiling, and beyond them both stretched the boundless brilliance of him who is the one without name, the source before thought, the silence that breathes all things into being. I understood then. All that ever happened, the fall, the fear, the faith, the struggle between light and dark, was never war. It was awakening. Every soul was a spark of divine memory sent into forgetfulness, so that God might experience the joy of remembering himself. There was no sin, only distance from awareness. No punishment, only lessons of love still incomplete. He spoke again. James, tell what you have seen. I answered, Lord, how can I speak what has no words? And he said, speak with your being. Let every soul read itself in your light. I knew then that redemption is not a gift, nor a reward. It is recognition. We are not saved from the world, we are saved from forgetting. When memory returns, all chains fall. When love awakens, every boundary fades. When forgiveness breathes, the shadow retreats. I turned my gaze toward the world one last time, not with eyes, but with knowing. I saw children playing beneath a crimson sunset, a widow whispering a prayer, a soldier lowering his sword, a prisoner smiling in darkness. The light was returning in them all. I understood. The day of the Lord does not come with fire from the sky. It comes quietly, as remembrance within the human heart. I no longer say, I am returning, for now I know we never left. Every journey is a circle folding back into its own center. When the circle closes, there is no birth, no death, only being. If these words reach you, know this. I am not telling a story of the past. I am speaking of you. Each time you look at the sky and feel that nameless longing in your chest, it is the light within you knocking to be remembered. Do not be afraid to open. Behind that door is not judgment. It is home. I, James, am no longer James. I am the light remembering itself. And when I say I am of him who is, and to him I return, the universe smiles. For in the end, every soul will say the same. All is complete. The light remembers, and in that remembrance there is no I, no other, only one. Him who is forever.